When I was growing up in a Christian household in the United States, the attitude towards popular culture was kind of mixed and confusing. On the one hand, there were a lot of Christians who said popular culture was like radioactive toxic waste. It's something that if you consume it, you will surely die a slow and horrible death. And then there were others that would say it's more like a box of Oreo cookies. It's not really all that good for you, but it's fun and you can just kind of have it. And honestly, what was toxic waste and what was Oreo cookies was not always clear. There were some vague notions about sex and swear words and such like that. But what was missing was any real understanding of what popular culture was, why it resonated with the human heart, why it was popular, right? And more importantly, there was a kind of an ignorance of how popular culture could be a bridge to talking to non-Christians about things that matter, right? Popular culture is, for better or worse, our common ground. So, what is popular culture? I'm going to say very strongly that popular culture is not defined against high culture. Like in the phrase arts with a capital A and entertainment, right? Where entertainment must be prefaced by the word mere. It's mere entertainment, but it's art. No, because that kind of qualitative distinction is very, very unhelpful. I think a more helpful approach is to understand popular culture according to its venue of reception and its distribution. That is, elite culture tends to hang out in museums and concert halls where we have kind of a respectful silence and a sacred attitude towards it and stuff like that. Popular culture hangs out on your streaming services or on to interwebs. And it's part of our everyday life. And that's the point. It is woven into our everyday normal existence. It's not something special over here. It's the widespread impact of popular culture is why it ought to be of concern to Christians. Now, all of this is to say, we should care about popular culture, but caring itself does not count for much if we have no framework for rightly understanding what popular culture means and how to respond to it apologetically. So we need to think about how our Christian faith informs our assumptions regarding popular culture. Our method should flow from what the Bible tells us, because I've heard it's a good book and it's really helpful and stuff like that. But if it's our authority, it ought to tell us what's true about culture and popular culture and culture making and all that good stuff. So, first assumption comes from Genesis 1:26 through 28, that we are made in God's image. We are culture creators, as Andrew Peterson said, that whole sub-creators. We are made in the image of the Creator, and therefore we make all sorts of cultural stuff. Tables, chairs, fishing rods, houses, films, songs, stories, poems, TV shows, because we are hardwired to do so. Because we are also called by God. The Genesis 1:26 through 28 contains the creation mandate, right? Go, fill, subdue, make order out of this creation I've given you, says God. So from this flows two assumptions, that two consequences. Number one, that we are made in the image of the Creator and therefore respect the work that image bearers make. You cannot diss a cultural creation without dissing the person who made it, who bears the image of God, who deserves our respect. Even if you disagree with it, even if it contains stuff that you don't like, you ought not to disrespect it. You cannot strip human creators of their dignity. And second, every piece of culture, including popular culture, bears traces and fragments of God's grace because it was made by those who bear God's glorious image. There will be something in that cultural work that points us Godward, that has some echo or reverberation of God. This is what theologians call common grace, God shedding his beauty and grace and justice and mercy and kindness to everybody, regardless of whether they consider themselves Christian or not, both believers and non-believers. And that goodness reflects God's ultimate goodness and purposes in the world. Our second assumption comes from Genesis 3 and the whole rest of the Bible. That is, we're fallen. We are by nature twisted, rebellious creatures alienated from God. God, who should be our first love. We all have the twisted clown within. By the way, if you don't know Evil Heart, he is a computer game character, and I love the little heart sign that he has, love Evil Heart. But that's what we have, this malicious clown, the fool, who also is bent towards evil within. That's us. And from that understanding of human nature flows certain other consequences. Number one, our proper love for God is diverted, twisted, distorted away from what it should be, that is resting in God, towards all sorts of idols. Now, we are tempted to say, oh, those calf-loving Israelites. Or, oh, those Hindus who worship Shiva and whatever and bow down to statues, as if they were the only idol worshipers. No, idolatry is a theme woven throughout the scriptures that has to do with how we substitute God with something else that we believe will give us life and meaning and purpose and happiness, the thing that will get us up in the morning, the thing that we orbit around like the sun, like the planets orbit around the sun. Whatever is doing that in your life, that is your functional idol, whether it's a statue or not. And therefore, because we are creators and we got this idol problem, the things that we make will inevitably reflect that idolatry. They will be distorted away from their true purpose, which is love and glory of God. Like the idolatry in rom-coms is really, really obvious, right? What is the idol? Romantic love, if you find the real person who makes your day bright. And if you find that one special person, then life will kind of fall into place and everything will be great, right? That's an obvious one. As you will find if you start looking for them, they come in all sorts of different shapes and colors. So, put it all together, and what we get, the picture we get theologically of popular culture, is this very complicated, complex, messy mixture of honesty and deception, truth and lies, good and evil, all mixed together. So, I developed a simple and I hope effective method of asking questions of a piece of popular culture that you want to interrogate and figure out how best to approach with a non-Christian. However, before I get to that, I want to give some caveats and provisos and quid pro quos and stuff. So first of all, number one, I studied literature at university, and so my bias is towards works. I know that there are other things that are worthy, but when I think of popular culture, I tend not to think about like the things you just scroll through that are ephemeral, like TikTok. Maybe somebody will apply what I do to TikTok and social media, but all of those things are so quick that they don't, individually, they don't have a lot of apologetical discussion that comes out of them. Like, how would you apologetically discuss this? I'm sure it can be done, but, you know. So for better or for worse, I focus on a strain of popular culture, individual movies, individual songs, individual computer games, or whatever, and focus on those, and how would you speak with somebody who's really taken by that. Secondly, these questions, these heuristic questions, are for your own analysis and interpretation. It's a way of kind of thinking through the implications and the resonances and all that to help you think through before you have a conversation. Otherwise, you don't want to ask these questions of a non-Christian because it comes off as really kind of stale and fake, and it risks you turning your non-Christian friend into a project. And that doesn't generally go well. So don't do that. Just rather kind of think through the popular culture that you want to talk about, and then let it arise organically. So here are the 5 questions. Question 1, what's the story? Question 2, where are we? What kind of imaginary world are we drawn into? Question 3, what is good and true and beautiful here? That is looking for the common grace that we talked about. Question 4, we're going on an idol hunt. We're going to catch a big one. What's bad and evil and deceptive here? And question 5, how does the gospel respond? That is, how does the gospel respond where the idol claims to give life, but can't really? Now, let me break these down a little bit more. Most popular culture, like 95% of it, has some form of story. Not always. There are like EDM songs that are like, come on, baby, dance now. And that's not a lot of story there, but most popular culture has some sort of story. So get the story right. Like, just pay attention enough to the popular culture that you can actually articulate what the story's about, so that when the time comes and you're talking about it, you don't come off like an idiot who didn't get the point. Get the point. Like, get plot points. Figure out where the major turns are, right? Look at character arc. How does a character change or fail to change over the course of a movie or a TV series or a song or whatever? Look for conflict, external conflict. That is, our hero has a shotgun and he's about to go in and rescue the little girl, but there are bad guys. Or internal conflict. The guy with the shotgun remembers how he failed to rescue that little girl 12 years ago and is now having doubts because his father never really believed in him, and then he turned to drink and his wife left him. And then finally he resolves these through the plot and goes, let's do this. And that sort of thing. So make sure you get the plot right. Think about themes. What sort of themes are brought out? For those of you who studied literature in university or studied biblical stories, you have a leg up, right? But those of you, I'm seeing quite a few faces that might have already graduated from university, so more mature faces in the crowd. What can you do? Well, deal with a lot of stories. Figure out how stories work. Like, it's not too late for you. You can do this. All right, so that's question 1. Just get the story straight. That's just basic cultural interpretation. Number 2, where am I? What is the nature, the style, and the spiritual and moral assumptions of the world that I've been drawn into? This one tends to get neglected a lot, specifically by evangelicals who want to get to the text. We're all about text because we're Bible people. But the way that popular culture works well is it invites us into an imaginary world and says, hey, you should come hang out here for 2 hours, for 30 minutes, for 5 minutes, or whatever. And it's really important that you understand how the world is shaped stylistically. And that means you're going to need to spend a little time figuring out how different media do their thing, right? How does that framing of a shot emphasize this character? How does this lighting, putting this guy in the shadow, how does a modulation to a hierarchy in a song, what does that mean? How does these things mean? Why did this poet choose these specific words? Why did this novelist choose this specific image? Why this type of gameplay and not another, right? Figure that stuff out. Now, you may say, I don't know anything about this. I have good news for you, YouTube. There is an art form which has just come into its own in the last maybe 10 years, and it's called the video essay. And all you have to do is look for, how do movies mean? And you'll get more things than you can know how to deal with. If you want to start out, a really good starting point would be Every Frame a Painting. It's a channel. It has like 9 different video essays. On Vimeo, Cinemukiteo, Thomas Flight has a lot of good stuff. Like, these are things that you can spend hours wasting your time, but they're really, really interesting. And the same thing that goes for script writing, the same thing goes for television production, the same thing goes for video game development. They're out there. Just avail yourself. And if you want to know what makes movies work, watch lots of good movies. Like, get into your Kurosawa, get into Kieślowski, get into the masters of the craft, get into your Spielberg, right? Because that will give you an idea of how this imaginary world is built up and what it means and how different media mean in the different languages they speak. Secondly, you want to look for stylistically, I forgot to click. And then second, think about the moral and spiritual assumptions that govern this universe. What counts as good? What counts as evil? Is there a God? Is there any sort of spiritual, or is it all just material? What's cool? Is cool even a thing? What makes relationships work? What makes them fail? The more questions you can ask, they're like sort of submarine sonar pings that you get a shape of the underwater landscape of this land in which you are to dwell. So get a feel for the rules, get a feel for this imaginary world. All right, thirdly, what's good and true and beautiful here? Finding and connecting with the common grace. As I said earlier, because we are made in God's image, some of that grace is going to come through, that points Godward. I called these, in Apologetics, the footprints of God. There was a guy who was referring to my work, and he called them the fragments of grace, and I like that even better. So I'm stealing it, and I forget his name. So just kind of, what is your heart drawn to in this work, as true, as good, and beautiful? And enjoy that stuff. Make a little mental list. But it's not enough to just make the list. If it's common grace, then it will connect somehow with what you know of God in the Bible. How does this piece of common grace connect with what we know of God's character and purposes in the world? And just be able to articulate that to yourself. Because, and it will be there, when popular culture works, it works because it resonates with the good things of God in non-Christians. They don't even know it. They just enjoy it. Your job partly is to tell them why they enjoy what they enjoy, which sounds obnoxious, but it's not really. All right, question 4. What is evil and idolatrous and deceptive here? Popular culture is not all truth and grace and light and beauty, is it? It is made by those who rebel against the light. So, you have to, and those who try to make it through life without the light. So, how does one go about hunting for idols? First, you just ask questions. What's the thing that saves? What's the thing that saves the day? What's the thing that makes everything okay? What's the thing, or if nothing makes the thing okay, maybe that in itself is kind of an idol. I call this the ideology of dysfunction, right? We're all kind of messy and we're all kind of hopeless. So stop taking yourself so seriously and just enjoy life. That's an idol. It's an idol that I don't need anything to make me okay because I'm okay with my not okayness. But look for things like romantic love or success or sex, drugs, rock and roll, whatever. But no idol hunt is complete without actually toppling the idol over. Expose the shaky foundations that the idol stands on. That is, the things that it claims as its own, which generally come from common grace, and says, these are the things will give you life. And you just kind of ask questions about it. Not exactly innocent questions, but is what the idol assumes about reality, does it make sense? Does it actually connect? Does it square with reality? And can the common grace that you were drawn to in this piece of popular culture, can the idol actually deliver it? Or does it assume a universe in which those things are actually impossible? In other words, is the idol writing checks that it does not have the funds to actually pay down? You need to, in other words, show that the emperor has no clothes. Now, if that sounds like a lot to take in, it is. This undermining of idolatry is the business of a type of critical thinking known as presuppositional apologetics, started by theologian and apologist Cornelius Van Til and carried on by, in a form by Francis Schaeffer. It would take many more hours for me to explain all of what that means. But here's the gist. The common grace that non-Christians and we swim through, exist for, the things that make life livable and lovable, all of these point to God. They inevitably point to God. When you try to force an idolatrous interpretation on reality that screens God out of the picture, there will be a logical disjuncture. There will be a disconnect because the idolatrous interpretation in deleting God also deletes the possibility for these common grace elements to exist as real and meaningful within human experience. So once you start asking these questions, the idol will not stand up to scrutiny. It's a way of calling a spade a spade. It's a way of calling a naked emperor an emperor without clothes. If you want to know more, there's a lot of material for free on the internet about presuppositional apologetics. If you want something, if you want a good introductory text, the late Greg Bahnsen wrote a book called Always Ready, which is a good introductory material. If you want to go really deep, then his masterwork, Van Til's Apologetic, will give you the deep dive and translate a lot of Van Til, because Van Til was not a great communicator. But do be aware that the book is 733 pages long. Or feel free to ask me questions later. This is the thing I was trained in. But one thing to remember, there is always going to be a connection between what the idol claims it can give and the common grace that you saw in step 3. The idol needs the common grace. It's a parasite on common grace. It needs it to sell its own existence to you, even though it can't really support the existence of that common grace. A few contemporary idols. How many pop songs have you heard that says, all you need is love, love will save you? Or all you need is your friends, including, of course, the TV show Friends. Or just believe in yourself and you can do it. Now, please notice all of these are gifts of God. They do not make real good gods themselves. It is possible for lovers to betray each other. It's possible for love to grow cold. It's possible for friends to betray each other. It's possible even to betray your own aspirations. These are bad gods. By pointing to the hollowness of the idol, you can bring it down. If you have somebody who says, yes, all you need is romantic love, ask them, have they ever been in a long-term relationship? And if they say no, then you say, wait till you've been married a while, then come back and tell me that all you need is romantic love, right? You need more than that. Okay, question 5. How does the gospel respond? Answering idols, claiming common grace. To properly understand this, you have to understand the gospel in the widest possible spread. It is not simply Jesus died 2,000 years ago to forgive your individual sins and make you fit for heaven. It is about everything. The gospel is about everything. 2 Corinthians 5:21, if anyone is in Christ, and I know that the translations say he is a new creation, that's not the right translation. In Greek, it is literally, if anyone is in Christ, new creation. There is a new creation. And that means the gospel forces us to reevaluate family, business, money, sex, entertainment, education, death. Everything is put in a new light because we have come into a relationship with Jesus, that Jesus now lives in us, right? So, so this final step has to do with, so this is what the idol claims, right? But it's not possible with the idol. Let me now show you how it is possible with the gospel. How it is possible that Jesus saved us not just from our sin, but from a meaningless existence. Let me show you how the gospel makes good on the checks that the idol couldn't cash. So, for example, yes, death and resurrection of Christ changes everything. So, for example, this last step, you can show how God gives the things that actually the idol claims. So, the song claims that love is the greatest thing in the world. Where does love actually come from? Well, love comes from a loving God who created us in his image as beings who desire to be loved and can love others. And where do we know love in its truest form? It's when Jesus died for us, giving himself sacrificially. And we understand intuitively that sacrifice is part of love. That's what love means according to the gospel. All right, that's the lecture part. I would like to, excuse my desktop. I'd like to walk you through quickly an example of this, kind of setting up Sarah by doing a Taylor Swift song. And this is called Black Dog. And I'm going to take you through the 5 steps. If this were a smaller group and we had more time, I might do some back and forth and let you do it, but we're not going to because that would leave us with no time for questions. So, if we got sound, we got sound? We got enough sound? Oh, one more thing. There is one swear word in the song. It's a pretty mild swear word. It's an S-bomb. But just wanted to give you prior warning. If you blanch or swoon at the hearing of one swear word, maybe engaging popular culture is not for you. Or more seriously, I would encourage you not to swoon when you come up against one swear word, or even a lot of swear words, because that's where your non-Christian friends are living. Like you can't say, oh, I've got the vapors, if you want to be in their world. Okay? So, with that, let's try this out. If you don't know who Taylor Swift is, where have you been living? under a rock, I presume. But for sure, I think I can say without contradiction, Taylor Swift is the undisputed queen of the breakup song, right? Ever since Jake Gyllenhaal's Scarf, even before that, it's all been Taylor. This is a breakup song, right? Let's just walk through the story. Boyfriend forgets to turn off his location on his cell phone, goes into the black dog. Apparently, she confronts him or knows that he's cheating on her with someone who's younger. Please pay attention to the images of vulnerability. You know, how do you not remember us in the shower together? Intimacy, vulnerability, when I was rain-soaked and shaking. Also, please note how this is a song in which there's kind of the scream is not just frustration, it's a scream for vengeance, for justice. It's a banshee wail, in a certain sense. I hope you hear it while I'm dying. Please note, very spare instrumentation at the beginning verses, building on the refrain, more voices kind of coming into, like vulnerable solo, then other voices coming in to kind of bear witness, and then on the screaming, that's when the drums come in, bum, 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 and you get this kind of, this note an octave above, right? Where she's screaming, and that just kind of hangs in the air. That's her pain. I've been told we have 5 minutes left. I'm going to try to do this. Common grace. What's the common grace here? Well, is it right for her to feel betrayed by a man that she pledged her loyalty to, and then he treats that like garbage? Right? It would be really... and how do we connect that to what the Bible says? Marriages to be... And we don't know if they're married or living together or whatever. That information for this song is kind of irrelevant. Not for us, but for her. What does the Bible say about sexual union? It's something inviolable. It's something not to be betrayed, right? And the fact that she feels this frustration, this injustice, that's a problem. Now, what's the idol? You may want to say romantic love, and there's an argument to be made there. I would say it's vengeance. That she's like, in her imagination, she is decimating this guy. And that's what makes it, big word with Taylor Swift songs among her female fans, relatable. People who've been hurt by men, this is what they want. Now, can she get justice through this means? No, he's going to go off with this younger woman, and he will not live a particularly cursed life necessarily. Maybe he'll feel a little guilty, maybe not. But the kind of universal justice she longs for, she cannot deliver that herself, can she? Final step, and I'm doing this hyperspeed. I wish we had a lot more time to stretch our legs. What does the gospel have to say about this? It's tempting to do the cheesy Christian thing and say, Jesus is the boyfriend who will never betray you. And yeah, I guess so. I would say more. There's a longing for intimacy that will not be betrayed. There's a longing for. I'm reading a book right now, a theology book for my own edification by Marcus Peter Johnson called One in Christ. Great book, in which he says, we don't have salvation unless we are joined with Christ. And he describes this as a union more intimate than a union between a man and a wife. Ephesians 3, right? Or wait, Ephesians 5, sorry. And is it possible to be known in that way without being betrayed? And if you are known, what does that give you as a human being? It gives you the ability to forgive the person who betrayed you. This is not common. Forgiveness is not common in the Taylor Swift corpus. But for somebody who has gone through that and is eating themselves alive, this might be what they need as an entree into grace. Anyway, that's the thumbnail sketch of one of my favorite Taylor songs. I'm not a huge fan in that I don't know all of her songs, but I think this is my favorite off of Tortured Poets. So I've gotten the 1 minute warning or I get the guillotine. So I guess it's up for questions now.